Hey guys, welcome to the Black and White Podcast. I am Joe Klemczewski, and this is a place where we like to tease apart all of the things that I think society is dealing with, especially at the moment. Some of these things with my guest, Funda Dervisoglu, that we're going to try and see if there's some middle ground on topics, or maybe there's not. Maybe we just have to stay at each other's throats and fight it out. That's always an alternative. And Funda Dervisoglu is one of those people that I think would rather just have the fight. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. How are you, Funda?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, listen, one of the things I respect the most about you is that we can have this intellectual debate, and at the end of the day, we're still friends.
Well, that's kind of how our relationship started about 20 years ago, right? I think I was just standing at the front of a workshop, and you were just hurling insults at me before we had ever even met. So
that's because of the Colts turtleneck or whatever you had on.
So it all began.
Yeah.
So Funda, this is going to be, I think, one of my all-time favorite episodes ever, because it's a topic that continues to give me some level of angst, and it is the dichotomy or the pull between wanting to have it all, wanting to just have all of the drive and the ambition, and yet still, as people say, live a, quote, balanced life. And anybody who has ever tried to succeed at anything has felt this pull from time to time. And you are the first person who comes to my mind if I'm thinking about just sheer tenacity, somebody who has the killer instinct. Everybody's been talking about the Michael Jordan Netflix documentary, right? And one of the things that surprises people today who didn't get to see his entire career is that the guy was just unbelievably voracious when it came to he had to win. There was no second best. Everything was do or die. Everything was always on the line. And in some regards, 20 years of knowing you, I see you walk that line as well as anybody I've ever seen. I'm gonna get into your history professionally a little bit, but that's why I wanted to talk to you about this topic. And let me just explain to people who may not know you what you have done in your career. Starting out, you can clean this up. I know I'm gonna probably leave stuff out. But right now, you are in the Google Cloud project management team. So you are in Silicon Valley, and you have taken several steps on your way there. You've worked for Oracle, you've worked for WebEx. I don't know if I can say all these things, but there just seemed to be this trajectory where you were in the corporate world, moving, hustling, grinding, and every step of the way, there was always a plan for more. That's what I mean by that insatiable just desire to make sure you reach the top. So tell me, first of all, am I even close to being right in terms of that inner fire I see from you? And if so, where does that come from?
You are. All right, so I'm going to pay homage to the other doctor in my life, which is Dr. D, who also, like you, is very well educated with his PhD. And he taught me at an early age to recognize who you are. And there's two types of people in the world: go towards and go away from. Neither one is better than the other. Neither one is more successful, lazy, or any of this. It is just a trait. And I am a classic go towards. I need that carrot, that goal, and that's my rudder. In the absence of having that kind of go towards philosophy or prize in sight, I flounder. And I can point to times in my career where I've had to leave a company because I didn't see that path forward. And the minute that happens, like, my world falls apart because I feel so lost. My compass is gone. So that's where that comes from. It's just this, you can get into nature, nurture, all of that. But that's, if you can recognize the type of person you are and eventually figure out what moves you and motivates you, whether that's professionally, personally, what have you, then you work with it. You embrace it.
Did you understand anything at that level when you were in your 20s? Like when you were just graduating college or deciding even in college what you wanted to do, what was your mindset at that point?
So I graduated with my undergrad in business. I started as a psychology major and quickly realized that was a no-go. So then I went to business. And, I've grown up in a household that's technical. My father's technical, my cousin's technical, so on and so forth. I fell into high tech. So the only thing I cared about in my 20s at work was, do you have any idea what is going on around you? Like, that's it. I heard words, I heard terminology that I had no idea what it was. And so in my 20s, it was just pure survival. Like, okay, get your footing, understand this thing called tech and the corporate world. And I was fortunate. To this day I am. I have a safety net with, my father, and I point to him because he grew up in tech and he grew up in the corporate world. But in my 20s, I had no clue who I was. I was abrasive, aggressive, like louder than I am now, if you can imagine. Like, there's a lot of things that you have to kind of go through to learn, like, okay, sometimes you have to push too far to know where to pull back. But no, in my 20s, it was just go to work, make money, and try to survive.
So with that household being very high tech, you're in college, first majoring in psychology, then in business. Did you have a plan of what you wanted to do for your career, or was business just kind of, hey, I better do something to get this wrapped up and move into the real world?
Yeah, when I remember making the phone call home, like, psychology is not for me. Like, I was convinced I had every disease under the sun, and I was like, I can't imagine my days. No disrespect to anyone that does that profession, but I don't think I have the patience for it. And so I fell into business because I wasn't ready to switch schools or anything like that. I was at University of Vermont. So I said, business seems vanilla enough that it's not going to pigeonhole me into one career. So I went down that path. My father is the first in his family to get his PhD, and he comes from literally like a very poor family. And for him, when I graduated with my undergrad, we had one of the largest fights we've ever had because I had 2 job offers in hand. I had Bloomberg in New York City on Park Ave, and I had Teradyne, which is an automatic test equipment company in this podunk town called Nashua, New Hampshire. And if you compare Nashua to New York City, it's night and day. And I said, Pops, I'm taking one of these jobs. And he said, if you just stay in school one more year, you'll have your master's. And I said, that's a fact, but it's not what I'm going to do. And so we had this friction, and I said, I will make a commitment to you that I will go back and get my master's. It's just not right in this moment. And so I picked Teradyne because they offered educational assistance. At least I had enough wherewithal that why would I pay for my master's? I might as well let a company pay for it, right? And Bloomberg at the time, I don't know if they do today, but then they did not offer this program. So I fell into tech. I stayed at Teradyne for 10 years to get my master's because I ended up moving East Coast, West Coast, and all of that. But I didn't really have my true north at that point, or the go forward plan was my master's. Like, that was as far out as I could see. And I kind of also set, by the time I was 30, I wanted to own my first home, meaning I purchased it. I wouldn't have paid it off clearly at 30. But so those were kind of the 2 things that I went after. And then I kind of reset as I went, like, what's the best career? What's the best job? And, like you, right? You work long enough, you start seeing trends, or you start seeing, if I go in this direction, this might be lucrative, or if I go in this direction, I get more joy out of it, and you start feeling it out.
Now with Dr. Dervisoglu, and as I understand him from your descriptions, a great dad. Obviously, he wants the best for his kids, and so he's pushing where he thinks is necessary, as he did with education. But did you ever feel that stare, that fatherly stare, like you must do this or you're not going to have my approval? The decisions you made, were they entirely your own as you can consider it now, or how much did you feel pressure?
That's a good question. So my parents, grew up in Turkey, moved to Scotland where he did his PhD at University of Edinburgh in computer engineering, moved back to Turkey, had me, and then came to the States to UConn. He was a professor. So I did not appreciate any of this until later in life. But so I think they were figuring things out as fast as they were raising us, me and my brother here in the States. Now, I know parents figure things out, but they had this added element of they didn't grow up here. They didn't know cultural norms or what kids, there was a lot going on. He never pressured me, like, do this or do that. He drilled, and my mother, to her credit too, she did her undergrad in accounting. Like, education matters. So don't shortcut education. That was their philosophy. I'm not trying to say people who don't have degrees can't succeed. That's not my mantra. But in our household, it was education matters. So as long as I fulfilled my commitment to get my master's, everything else was, let's talk through it and figure out the best path forward. And that's the approach we've always taken. It was never, it was never like, you need to be at this level, make this money, this title. And, he was never like that. And to this day, he's not like that. Like, I give him more credit for his PhD than I think he takes.
Yeah. And I could have guessed that answer because I see how healthy you are emotionally in terms of your pursuits and the balance that you do take a good amount of time to try and achieve. But I wanted to make that point because a lot of people don't. A lot of people see the super achievers out there as the people who are spending their entire lives trying to still win the approval of a parent, still feeling inadequate. No matter what you achieve, it's still never enough because of that parent. And I mean, this is one of the things that I've done in one of my, my master's degree in writing. I did a developmental psychology memoir on fatherhood and parenting. And so these are the things that kind of stick out to me in conversations like this. And you've always talked so fondly of your parents. I know how much you love your mom and your dad and how much you respect your dad. And it's always just given me that sense of awe, like, wow, this family did it right. And so I just wanted to see what you had to say in terms of him pushing you toward this trait that you innately had, which was to be an achiever.
Yeah, I mean, look, the world's so different today, but there was no participation trophy. Like if we messed up, we owned it.
Yeah.
Right. I remember as a little kid breaking a window in the house, and it was behind a tree that you really had to be like an 8-year-old to like kind of squeeze in, and somehow I broke the window. And my father was like, "Did you break this window?" And I said, "No." And he finally was like, "I want to talk about how you think this window might have been broken." And eventually he pulled it out of me, and I got grounded for a while because he said, "It's not that I'm mad about the broken window. I'm mad that you couldn't be honest. It's not that big a deal that you broke it, but you were not honest." And so these are the always, like, it's not because you screwed up or you made a mistake. Like, we're all humans. We're going to make mistakes. It's really owning it. And really, if you don't learn from it, what was the point of making that mistake? You'll likely repeat it. That was his kind of, mantra. And he always asked me this question, and I hate it, but I love it. What will you get when you get what you want? He makes me answer that, and then he makes me answer it 2 more times. Like, so we go, it's like the 5 whys, I suppose, right? And it really frames why am I going after this thing? Oh, because I want X, Y, Z. What happens when you get X, Y, Z? And it really forces you to connect with, like, what do you really want?
That's just it's an amazing thing. And you giving this kind of accolade to your father is even better. But just to have that voice, somebody that you can respect and speak to about these life issues this far along. I mean, it's been a couple decades since you were in college and working toward that master's. But
hey.
Let's take a step back and make sure that we didn't gloss over too much that the fact that you are in upper level management at Google. I mean, these are the kind of jobs that people would just do anything to get. And yet you took this path through different companies, getting the skills you needed, the experience. But I want to backtrack and walk through those steps a little bit and let people see what it's like to achieve that level of success in what I would say probably is the hottest type of market there is. I mean, in the tech sector, everybody has the cliche meme mentality of what it's like to be at Google, right? Like they think you go there and you just get a massage, a butler takes your car and your kids or your pets go off to daycare at Google. Like everything is provided for you. So that you're like, yeah, that's exactly how it is. But let's back up a little bit. You spent 10 years in Nashua, and what was that next step? How did you decide you wanted something else, and how did that courtship, for your service happen?
So it's actually a really good look back, right? Because I learned so much. So a decade at one company, got my master's, hung out a bit. Meanwhile, I'm observing my friends are moving companies. And I'm observing that they're experience, the way they're talking about work, there is different. Like, I'm noticing this, and I'm like, I have only been at one place, and Teradyne was an amazing company. Like, I have nothing bad to say about it. But I woke up one day and I was like, I've got to leave. I've got to leave because I'm only going to learn the Teradyne way. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if I don't vary my experience, I'm just going to be kind of brainwashed, if you will, into this one view in this one company. And so I was like, all right. And I put some feelers out, and I, a very close girlfriend of mine out here, I was in Nashville at the time, but got me an interview at her company, and I got a job. It was doing something I'd never done before. And I just remember being like this anxiety of like, you get a new job. Am I going to be okay? Am I going to perform? And I think having that anxiety is so healthy as long as you can control it, because it means you want to do well. So you can't let it engulf you. But I was now, selling self-serve kiosks, whether it was the gas pump, which is a self-serve kiosk, or an ATM, or the self-checkout, right? This is a new world for me. I'd never done it. 3 months into this, the company gets acquired. My entire department gets laid off. So I had 10 years of stability, 12 weeks of like, oh, okay, you got this. And then I was like, oh my goodness. And, I'm still fresh out of my, new into my career. And I remember calling home going, Mom, Dad, like, I have a little bit of savings, but 3 months at a company, you don't get a very large severance package. This isn't like you're set, I said, I will figure this out, but I need you to be on standby. And I recognize I'm fortunate because I have this safety net. And Dr. D said, here's what's about to happen. You're going to go down to unemployment, and you're going to file for unemployment. And he kind of walked me through it because he had been through this in his career. So I go through all of that. If you think the DMV is the worst place on the planet, unemployment office, I would say rivals it. So I go through all this. And then after this, I was like, okay, if I'm going to look for a job again, let's again stay on the mantra of new experiences. And so I'm moving through a supply chain of like, I've been in the back end of the company. I've been at the front end of the company. Like, maybe I should try my hand at sales. Like, sales seems kind of like a really good thing to do. And looking back, I think everyone should do a stint in sales. Like, it's a very good thing. By the way, I'm not good at it. Like, I did not enjoy WebEx sales at all. But I went to WebEx, now selling video conferencing back in, gosh, what year was this? This is probably 2000, like 2002 maybe. And I don't know, I'm just selling this video conferencing thing that had, it was brand new at the time, doing a sale using WebEx. So it's like, hey, Joe, you're in a trial with me. Let's talk about this. But that taught me so much about me. And it also taught me a lot about, don't discount those sales folks out there. Like, no matter how good your product is, it does not sell itself. Like, that is such an engineering or a proud product owner viewpoint, which you should be proud of your product, but there is no such thing as selling itself. Like, there are objections left, right, and center that are out there. So I started doing that, and did that for a couple of years, and that was really like, okay, like, I know I don't want to do this again, but I'm glad I did it. My parents had moved from Massachusetts, which is where the Patriots, love comes from, to the Silicon Valley when I was a sophomore at University of Vermont. And at the time, California felt so far. So I stayed in school there. They were out here. But 2002, I was like, maybe I should go and be closer to family. I'm missing out on the good years that they have. Like, I know when they need me, I'll be there. Like, I'll drop everything and go. But why don't I actually spend time with them while they're able and healthy? And so I moved out to the Silicon Valley, and I had a friend that I had worked with in the past. Networking is so important. Like, people are afraid of it, or it's awkward, or you feel like, oh, I can't call Joe and ask him or tell him I'm looking for a job. No, you can. It just, you'll do that for someone, when the shoe's on the other foot. So I networked my way out here to the Silicon Valley, and again, went a totally different direction, still in tech, but I went kind of more into manufacturing. and kind of learning that side of the business. And
Was that,
then
was
from
that
here,
Oracle?
no, this is Brocade. This is 2010. I moved out here. So I hopped a bit. I did Brocade for 2 years. I did NetApp for 2 years. I did Cisco for 18 months. And then I did Palo Alto Networks, Oracle, and now Google. And I know, I get it. People who are not in the Silicon Valley are judging me right now. And I welcome your judgment. I'm cool with it. Like, this is the Silicon Valley. This is what happens. In fact, if you stay at a job too long out here, they look at you like, what's wrong with you? Like,
What were some of the reasons why that you moved when you were going between those 2 or 3 companies in the middle there? Was it you just didn't like that, or you didn't feel there was enough opportunity in an upward mobility kind of way?
Brocade was great until I had a new boss that was just, I knew it wasn't gonna go. Like, your boss really, like, this is the person who controls like your review, your salary, whether you get promoted, and we just oil and water. And I was like, I'm all set with this. Like, my go forward, there was no path forward. I was like, end of the road. NetApp, it was not a bad ride, although I got written up in HR, which was also an interesting experience. This is where Dr. D like totally guided me, but I got written up for being insubordinate.
Which doesn't surprise me one bit.
To be fair, my boss and my boss's boss weren't on the same page. And so my boss's boss was saying no, my boss was saying yes, so I followed the no. It was a good lesson learned. Like,
you know what's funny about this is when I was young, so I had my own business by the time I was 27, and that meant I was probably way too young to have staff and that kind of thing. So talk about figuring parenting out on the way. You're figuring out how to treat other human beings who work with you and for you. And, you know, so many things that I regret in making mistakes with human beings. But the one thing that it did teach me is that people who do have high ambition and they're these rockets that just need guided, a lot of times that makes a boss feel insecure. And I imagine having you on some of these teams, if I was your boss, you know, you're this tiger in a cage that you never quite know what's going to happen. But I have learned that, man, that is the best kind of staff member you could ever have, because if you keep them aligned with your goals for the company and whatever kind of organization you're in, like, wow. But I would tell you 20, 25 years ago, that would have been a huge threat to me too. And I would have been very, very much on that same page. So those are the kind of things that I think in the corporate world, as well as small business America, those interpersonal dynamics are just critical in how everybody's going to survive.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people are working with people. I don't care if you're in corporate, you're in small business. Like, at the end of the day, we're all people trying to figure this out together. At the time, it was awful. Like, I remember going over to like my parents' house and like moping, and I couldn't break like my negativity. And my father just said to me, put all your wood behind one arrow and go fight it. And I was like, okay, I have my go forward plan again, right? In the end, it didn't work. And I decided, you know what, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I'm going to go. And it was honestly, again, like getting laid off, it was one of the best things that can happen, because one, I learned a lot about how to navigate that situation. And two, I look back, like, you know how many hours I gave of my emotional like well-being to negativity? I get it. It's stressful. It's your income. It's, you know, pick a situation, but I've learned now, like, you're going to weather the storm. And a lot of that is how you mentally approach it.
Well, you say that you didn't like sales, but everybody should do it because it does give you a sense of humility and the fact that this is what makes business churn. But you were really good at it and still are. And I think the fact that you had to learn how to deal with people in a very direct way is what has made you the kind of upper level management person that can then teach and bring along people in the next generation. So for those who just don't understand maybe what it takes to run a business or a company or a department, talk for a second about what that means in terms of how ambitious you have to stay, and then how you can filter that down to other people to still, you know, just like sled dogs, you got to all be in that same line pulling the same load. How does all of that happen in your world?
So I think the the number one thing you have is focus. It's very easy to get distracted from what you set out to do. And I see it all the time. Like, we spend a lot of time in meetings talking about something. And at the end of it, like, if I put the Dr. D, what will you get when you get what you want? Like, whatever we're debating is actually distracting us. Like, we need to stay focused. And so, especially in larger organizations, when you have so many people, and it's like the classic game of telephone, right? The more that message changes as it goes around. And so your messaging matters, like making sure people understand it and that resonates. The other thing too, I think, is that as a leader, you set the tone. If you are panicked and stressed and flailing, your team is panicked and stressed and flailing. And so that took me a while to work on this. And I wouldn't say master, I'm still working on it. Like, my insides could be boiling. On my outsides, I'm trying to keep like calm, because if I go off the rails, everyone will go with me. People follow a leader, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent, they'll follow that leader. We're seeing this today. And so how you behave as that kind of leader, whether you're the leader of a company, the leader of a team, the leader of a project, it doesn't matter. You're the leader, and you have to kind of set that appropriate tone. You also have to give people a voice, and this is tricky because, I used to joke with an old boss, not at Google, but I was like, does the janitor have say in my project? Like, I'm just curious, how far do I let this go that everyone is trying to say what they want to say? So that's a very careful, interpersonal skill of, Joe, I want you to feel like you're heard. But at some point, I also need to, as a leader, make a decision of like, which way are we going, without squashing you if for some reason you're not on board. And there's this constant swirling, and priorities are changing, the environment's changing, people are leaving, new people are coming, and you just have to kind of stay calm and stay the course.
Yeah, it has definitely just been the last couple of years that I have taken the science of leadership with the level of seriousness it deserves. Like I said, probably started out too early. I achieved too much too soon. And so I didn't have to learn a lot of these things until it was on the job training. And I always perceived leadership as, well, if somebody is just worth leading, he'll or she will gather followers, and there they go to conquer the world.
Right.
But obviously there's a lot more to it than that. Some of the social sciences, one of the reasons I'm so drawn to that now, really do explain exactly what makes somebody worth following and who makes those better decisions. And, not just the temperament and so forth, but there are just so many true management styles that one can adopt. But there are a lot of the same principles that have to be the spokes on that wheel. So if I asked you to go back a little bit through your work history, what are the temperaments or the traits that you think really got you to where you are? And I'm gonna make sure you don't answer it the same way, because you started out saying, well, there's nature and nurture, and I'm the person who always moves forward. And I also feel like I'm very, very lucky that I have a high level of energy, just an insatiable intellectual curiosity. I have a sense of pride that I always want to do my best for everybody, for the team. I was even telling one of my professors just recently, I've taken a couple summer term courses, and she's a political theory scientist, and she had this survey, like at the end of the course, like, how would you rate yourself? How would you rate your peers? And I said, well, this is the first time I ever had to answer this question. But I said, I strive, and I got an A+ in the course, like,
Of course you do.
Of course I did. But I said, I would give myself an A simply because I set out to do an amount of work that I think is commensurate to the respect you deserve. You put this course together. You have given us this time. You did an exceptional job organizing this. So if I'm out here just being an ass, being lazy, not getting stuff done, I feel that's a sign of respect toward you. It's not just me wanting a grade or a course or a degree. So to me, there's always this entwined sense of togetherness and what are you doing for the group? But I will say that is so innate. A story I often tell is my first day of kindergarten. If you can imagine the night before, here's 5 or 6 year old Joe, I had my entire backpack packed, set right by my shoes by the side of the bed. I was already dressed for school. When I went to bed, I slept on top of the covers with my arms folded across my chest to make sure I didn't wrinkle my clothes. So when that bus came at 5 or 6 years old, like I'm there. Like that's that sense of, I don't know why that happened. Like what kind of a weird kid is that? But that's still me. Like even now, the day or the week before a course, I'm printing out the syllabus. I'm just doing all the same things. So I really feel like that's entirely luck on my part. But I also know I've had to learn some of the traits along the way to keep my ambition going in the direction that's healthy for me and healthy for other people. So with the natural abilities you think you have, what are some of the things you've had to really work for to keep your career moving forward?
So it's more about being open and how, eat your own dog food and kind of really like, look, I can set out and I could get a ton of work done. But if I have carnage in my path on how I got my work done, that's not good. And so I don't worry about as much, will I get the work done, to your point? Like, you're going to get the course, you're going to do the work, you're going to get the grade. Like, that's not the issue. The issue is, are you doing it in the best way possible? And the thing that, and part of this comes with a little bit of maturity, right? Like, I'm 45, I've been working a while, right? So feedback is a gift. Even more so, negative feedback is a wonderful gift. Now, it's really hard to hear. It's really hard to hear. So you have to be in the right frame of mind. But if you can just sit back and listen, the way you view yourself may not be the way others view you, right? Like, I did the work. I got the project done on time. Like, customers love it. Yeah, but you know what? You left 10 people crying in the bathroom. I've done that. I've had to deal with those conversations, like, you made so-and-so cry. Let me also just clarify, like, 2 points here. One, as an adult, I reject that. And two, as a female, when another female cries, I also reject that. Like, just come talk to me. Like, we're adults. So the corporate world's kind of wonky in some ways. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is, like, you have to be open to understanding you, and not just yourself, but how others perceive you and how others work with you. And that vision may not always match the feedback you get. And when you get that feedback, do something with it. Because I think if you're driven, you're driven. There's nothing that it's not the Wheaties in the morning you're eating that's like, oh, I'm going to have a good day today. Like, you just wake up, to your 5-year-old example, like, that's the way you are. So it's not about your drive. It's more about learning your work style, your personality, and then how do you mesh with others? Because you'll go further, together you go further, right? So if you can get more people behind you, and whether that's corporate or personal, right? The more people you get kind of in your camp, but without being, you want to stay authentic to yourself in that process. This isn't a popularity contest. Like, that's the learning I've had to go through. And, even, 5 years ago, like, I hit that wall at a company where, like, I made people cry. And I can own it now. And at the time I was like, that's their problem, but no, it became mine.
I may be one of those people. I may have cried a time or two. Picked on me.
There's a joy, though.
So it's interesting you say that, because when I was studying personality psychology, one of the things that I really learned was how every single strength we think there is generally has two sides. So for an example, you could be somebody who's loyal. Like, I am a stalwart, just loyal human being. Well, you can take that to a degree where that means you're inflexible. You just won't yield. You're committed to things that may be wrong, and you're not willing to be open-minded. So there can be negatives to every strength we have. And so you being very ambitious and driven, I can see exactly how those were the things that you've had to temper a little bit. But there are a lot of people, I think, more than not, who wish they had even an ounce of the kind of ambition we're talking about, and they're willing to work for it. They want to know the secrets. They're reading all of the Entrepreneur and Inc. Articles on how to be a leader, how to win, how to be a successful entrepreneur. So for somebody to ask you after your career that's not even finished and you've already achieved so much, like, how do I follow in those footsteps? What would be your advice? This is your chance to be Dr. D and give some advice and say, here's what it's going to cost you.
start with what are you going after and what will you get when you get there? Is that enough of a why for you? Because you can read every book and you can do, I mean, it's like weight loss, right? I mean, like you can find all the right scientific formulas and all of this, but if you're not kind of connected to that, I think you're going to struggle. I think also, I realize I live in a bubble out here and I've been out here enough that I might be a little bit insulated from like a little bit of reality, but I've never been one to attach myself to like a title or like, I manage so many people, or like the stuff that that motivates you comes from within you, not externally. Sure, like making more money and things like this are obviously like nice rewards, but I think you have to connect with what you're going after. Like if I'm really not, like I'll tell you, from Oracle to Google, like I used to manage a team at Oracle. I don't manage a large team at Google, right? I don't manage anybody right now at Google. I influence a whole bunch of people, 0 direct reports. This did not bother my ego whatsoever. But if you are attached to the wrong things, you'll be motivated to do the wrong things. And in the end, you may not achieve that happiness and success you're going after. So I think you really have to look in the mirror and say, like, what am I going after and why am I going after it? And does it really feed my heart and soul?
And do you have any regrets? Has your pursuit cost you anything that you look back and say, yeah, maybe I went a little too far, a little too hard, or too far in that direction?
This is like the Lance Armstrong question. So no, because it's all taught me so much. So I actually, and it's hard, right? When you're in the middle of a storm, it's hard to know that that's going to teach you something, and you're going to come out of the other side a better person, as the cliches say. But every time I've made a mistake or sidestepped or whatever, like I look back now and it all connects in a way that you just didn't realize at the time, right? Like if I hadn't screwed up there and gone for that job, I wouldn't have met this person and this wouldn't have happened. Like it's just. And so I don't regret. I would regret if I didn't learn from my mistakes. But looking back, and even now, I mean, trying to really stay level and present, and am I doing the right thing? Am I holding myself to the way I want to be seen? I forget if it was a book I read or someone told me, like, we do performance reviews like everywhere, right? Like whether you're in corporate or not, somehow you're evaluating some analysis of performance, right? And it's like, write your own performance review the way you want it to be received. And then look at that every day and say, are you doing these things that you want in your review? And while I haven't actually written it out in my, mentally, I have that vision and I hold myself to that much more today. People that have worked with me 10 years ago to now, it's like, I know they would say you're a different person. I mean, but Dr. D says it all the time. Like sometimes he's like, you've gone too soft, like toughen up again. But it's weird. But, it's just, it's all learning.
It's interesting you say that, because that is definitely one of the things that I have seen over the last few years in you. And I wouldn't say it's a softness in business. I wouldn't, because I don't know. I don't work with you in that regard. But I would say there has definitely been this open-mindedness. And if you look through, again, just kind of developmental psychology, we get to these, civically charged years of our life where it's like, okay, we're through the school stuff. We've raised a family or not. And now we're at a certain age where, what's my real impact on the world? And what do I want to do with my remaining years if I'm kind of on the other, half here, across the 50-yard line? And I've had a sense of that in you, that there's this richness that wasn't always there, an appreciation and a gratitude, where when your head is down and it's just constantly like conquer the world mode, you just kind of miss out on that. And so yeah. Am I characterizing that fairly for you?
No, you are. I mean, part of it is maturity and kind of, again, holding the mirror up to yourself. But as you know, like my mom got cancer in 2014 and it rocked my world. It rocked my family's world. And I didn't have this outlet that I needed. Like I didn't know what to do. And I started, I joined this like 5K, 10K that was a fundraiser. I joined it because it was a breast cancer one and it was local. Fast forward, I'm on the board of directors now over there, right? And it is an amazing journey to be like, you don't realize, like, there's this achievement you have, right? Of, I'm going to go hard in my career, whatever that is, and I'm going to measure success by whatever levers you measure your own success by. But there's this other component of just helping others, right? And whether that's giving back generationally or, you know, like, especially in tech, female to female, like, that's a big thing, and I stand by that. Or I watched all of these people, you know, in these infusion rooms going for treatment that are alone, that didn't have family around, or whatever their story might be. And I have this great sense of giving back. And you know, like, okay, I'm 45 and Dr. D still helps me with my taxes. And every year he makes a comment about, Jesus, you give so much money away, right? And I'm like, no, Dad, like, I'm helping others because I can. So there is this kind of, maybe it started as a self-fulfilling prophecy because I was so lost during my mom's cancer, but it's one of these things that now, like, if I believe in the cause and all of that, I'm all in. And it doesn't have to always be financial. It can be, you know, volunteering your time, your experience and things like that. But I am like 100% behind that cause of giving back. And so that has also, I think, altered my brain, whether chemically or not, I don't know, but my brain is definitely differently wired today than it was head down running, to your point.
Definitely. Well, I have a couple questions I want to close with, but one that I cannot escape because I think it's just important in the times that we live in. And it was in the news this morning. As soon as I woke up, I hear that this news organization that just seems to be the bastion of sexual assault and harassment now has some more of their top people, you know, with all kinds of allegations. You've gone through several companies, and you have mentioned twice now a you know, female to female dynamic and so forth. And then you said, and sometimes the corporate world is kind of wonky. And to me, that was you kind of just brushing aside this gender issue. But I think it's something that I at least would love to see faced head on so we can get through it, because every kind or type of civil rights movement, it's a painful thing. You know, women's suffrage, slavery, civil rights, gay rights, all of these things. It's just, there is so much turmoil and sometimes violence. And then we emerge on the other side like it was never even a question. Like, well, why did those people back then believe that stupid shit? And I kind of feel like this is one of those times where, like, it was so just accepted 30, 40, 50 years ago when women were just entering the workforce. Now more women graduate with bachelor's degrees. There are more women in management than men. You know, thankfully, women are taking over the world. I think not only is it a time for that kind of reconciliation, but I truly think there needs to be some level of equality there, just between temperament, strengths, weaknesses, the different kind of social needs and responsibilities of each gender. But I'm just asking you directly, in your career, have you had to face that stuff where you were just like, holy shit, what is going on here?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I can tell you, I think it was 2 years ago, I had about 15 women over, right? And we were just doing a happy hour, and a little alcohol got flowing, and we started becoming braver and sharing stories. Every single one of us had at least a story that we could share, ranging in severity, but nevertheless, whether it's a black and white issue, it's unfortunate, and we have to do our part. This is the hard part about it. Like, you want to talk about an awkward conversation? Like, I had this conversation with Dr. D. I was, a couple companies ago, my boss was new, a cybersecurity company. And so to have email on your phone, you had to put an app on. So he says to me, hey, do you have this app? And I said, yeah, but if you don't want it, like, don't download it. It's purely like volunteer. Like, you don't have to have it. You just won't get email on your phone. He's like, well, my fiance and I sext a lot. Like, are they watching me? This has nothing to do with my career, has nothing to do with my job. It's highly inappropriate. Granted, it's not an assault on me. And I had to make a decision in that moment of, what do I do about this? And I just fired back in a pretty terse way, but I'm not IT, go find an IT buddy. And later on, you know, months later, I talked to Dr. D about it. Like, and I was like, this happened, and did I handle it correctly? He's like, you absolutely did. And here's the bitch of this whole situation. I could have gone to HR. You know what would happen? He said, she said.
Mm-hmm.
And you know who would have been hurt in the process? Me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because HR is there just to make sure the company doesn't get sued. Like, that is HR's function, and that is what they do. Now, if it was a more severe thing, like if it was an absolute, like, you have to sleep with me to get a promotion, like, I'd put everything on the line and, like, I'd be in the media, you know, like, but the hard part that we have as women is, like, how do you, when the machinery, and it's kind of like the conversation today about racism, right? When the machinery isn't working for you, what do you do, right? And that's a hard thing. And I think every, you know, I don't want to say every woman, but a lot of people I know have dealt with it. Some a lot more directly, where they have had, you know, passes made at them or more serious things where they have gone to HR, and you have to be prepared for that fight. And that's a hard fight because it's embarrassing. Everyone suddenly knows your business.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's something hard. That, you know, you can definitely understand exactly for the reasons you said, why women just kind of play the game, and you just try and deal with it as you go, but you never make a big deal about it. But, you know, the interesting thing is now the people who are willing to have that fight, they pave the way for other women to not have to deal with that. And it's interesting to me, you know, I mean, a lot changes when you have daughters. And, you know, as I see now, you know, my grown daughters, and, you know, 2 sons, 2 daughters, so I get the best of both worlds. But it's it should be a fact that every male fights for female equality as well, and female safety, and just respect. And yet, of course, I have to bring in the anthropology, the primate reality of the fact that there are some people who just don't think intellectually or socially, and there are just these biological truths that are going to play out. But I will say also, tons and tons of social science research proves that people can be taught. An entire generation, an entire culture that was brought into the world one way and taught one thing can flip. They can absolutely change and learn. And so that's what I feel is happening now. And just the fact that there are so many women with the courage to come out and say, this is happening, this is real. And it allows other women the chance to say, yeah, I don't have to deal with this. I can put my foot down, let the cards fall where they may, and everything will be okay.
Yeah, yeah, there is. And, you know, you're right. Like, there's a lot of, you know, again, back to, you need a lot of supporters in your corner. What's super interesting about kind of the landscape is that the good guys, when you tell them what's happening, they're shocked. So part of the reason people, like, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but in my opinion, part of the reason some men are not in the fight is because they don't see it, right? And so when you bring it to them, right, then they're in. So the example I gave you of my boss, I left that company, right? This was a no-go for me, like, it's done. After I left, I told a guy friend of mine who still worked there the story. I got a call from HR. And then I saw it through, right? So but until people hear about it too, like, I don't, you know, there's both, like, what you were raised with in your beliefs, but also a lot of the guys are like, we don't see it. And we're like, we know these guys are sneaky. They're not going to do it where you can see it. But when you do talk to them, they'll help you, right?
Well, what is left for Funda Dervisoglu? Let's go back to the metaphor of Michael Jordan. He's already won 3 championships, 4, 5, going for a 6th. Then, of course, that's not enough. He has to go play Major League Baseball and then make a comeback into the NBA. So for you, what is your goal? As you said, what is that circle of why? And as you seek to achieve it, what are you really hoping for?
It's a great question. So for me, at this phase of my life, it is, I don't want to say work-life balance. That term gets used so much, right? I want happiness in my life, right? And some of it will come from work, and hopefully the majority of it's coming from outside of work, right? And so I'm very fortunate that I live near family. Knock on wood, we're all healthy, minus the pandemic going on, of course, and my state seems to be a little bit out of control. But you know, right now I'm in this great space, and you know this because I email you every morning with kind of here's where I'm at on the scale, and it's not about the scale, but I'm on a great personal journey, right? I'm open. I'm as open as I've ever been. And so whether it's like trying new sports, like I bought the Peloton bike and like cycling is totally new to me, or it's forging, you know, new opportunities at work, or it's reading all kinds of different books. Like I'm as spongy as I can be right now with just trying to absorb all this goodness. And I'm just trying different things. And some of them serve me very well. And the ones that don't, I learn from and I kind of let go. But I don't have a direct north I'm going for at work right now. Like, it's okay. And I kind of coach myself through this. I see people all around me. I'm friends with people of all kinds of titles, run companies, CEOs, whatever. Like, those are their paths. I'm like, if I like what I do, I'm happy with what I get paid. Like, sit in that gratitude, sit in being okay with what you have. And you don't always have to keep going for this crazy thing in front of you, although improvement and forward progress. So I don't have a straight answer for you other than I'm trying to blend all of my life in a way that's like, it's happiness. And some of that's hard stuff, right? We've had the conversation like cutting friends, right? Or cutting something that doesn't serve you, or, you know, in the health world, like, oh, you're not drinking, really? Like, yeah, that's right. I wake up every day feeling amazing, but I'll never give up my wine totally, you know? So it's finding that right balance. And I feel like the pandemic sucks, don't get me wrong. I've seen so many friends and businesses either struggling, going under. But again, I'm trying to make the best of it when I can. And it's affording me this opportunity of more time at home to also experiment with things that I couldn't before, or maybe didn't think of doing before. So I'm wide open right now.
Well, I think in about 5 years, you're going to be like Jon Stewart and you just retire to have this like animal rescue farm and you just like show up once in a while.
Move to Evansville.
Yeah, no, maybe not. Don't go that far. There are way too many other good things.
Yeah, I promise I won't.
Okay. Just please rescue me out. That's the plan.
Yeah, you can live on the farm.
But again, the whole reason I wanted to have this conversation, Funda, is because the whole concept of the Black and White podcast is that we constantly fight for this binary world where somebody's got to be right, somebody's got to be wrong, something's up, something's down. There always is zero room in the middle. And it really is your transformation. I think I would call it a transformation in the last 3 to 5 years, where I saw you achieve all these things. And I wouldn't say that there was ever a negative to it. You were living the life you wanted to, but I saw this kind of blossoming where you did become very, very open and very gracious. And, even as a friend on the other end of your rabidly aggressive personality, which has all of those great traits tied to it, there was this newness, and I feel like you did kind of find that space in the middle where you can get the best of all worlds. And to me, to kind of answer my own question as far as what I want out of life is, it is almost like a piece of art. And unfortunately, you grow up and developmentally you just don't have all the answers and you make all these mistakes, but eventually your eyes open up enough where you can say, okay, I'm really in control of my own destiny. And I say that, but truly not everybody reaches that. Some people just feel like they're just playing a role in somebody else's play. But I kind of feel like you're on that same path and that same page in terms of saying, man, this is my life. I'm going to make it exactly what I want, no more, no less. And I'm going to keep shaping it. It never stops. Again, I look at your parents as a prime example of people who are still in that same flow, continuing to be involved in their children's lives and in their communities. And it's, there's the achieving side, but then you said it so perfectly. It's what's next? Once I get that, what do I really have? I think that is the perfect way to approach it.
Yeah, no, and I can't thank you enough. One, for wearing that stupid Colts jersey or whatever you wore, because that brought us together. But you've been a big part of my journey, right? And I think it was last October that I really kind of got into a little bit more of the self-improvement side of just health. And both, our emails are both equally about health as they are about world, or I guess the country's events, right? And like, having people like you in my life is amazing, because there's that openness and there's always a different, perspective people bring. And it's unfortunate today, but I love that we can debate and that we can have this conversation, right? And that at the end of the day, it's an intellectually based conversation. Not to say we're the smartest people. You're way smarter than I am. But, I went to my MBA. I picked my school because I didn't have to take my GMATs, like, just to give you like where my brain's at. But I love that we can have the conversations we do. So thank you.
Well, another thing that you said in this conversation regarding networking is how important it is. And it is those individual relationships that matter most. And you described a little bit of a transition in October, and not ironically, that's because you and I got to see each other on the West Coast, got to have a good kind of a rekindling of our friendship and see each other. And then we got to see each other again in Seattle. And I think that is the catalyst for change. It's never reading a certain book or, here's a quote by some leader on how to be ambitious, but we really do rely on other people. We're a social species, and those deeper connections, the ones that are most meaningful, really do help that journey not just become more rewarding in a tangible way, but just something more enjoyable. And it's, again, another reason why we're chatting right now is, we both are in that phase of life where these are the kind of questions we have and we want to answer, and it always works better together.
Yeah, and you learn from each other, right? That's the beauty of it too. There's things everyone brings to the table.
Absolutely. Well, Funda Dervisoglu, a manager in the Google leadership platform cloud thing, whatever you guys do out there in Silicon Valley.
Where your phone is talking to and stuff.
Conspiracy. You guys are just you're just trying to steal all our information and control us. Chips in our brains, all that good stuff. But I think in the future, you should definitely be the Secretary of Labor or something like that in government. So we'll see in the next couple of administrations how we can get you in there.
Yeah, I wasn't born in this country. That might automatically disqualify me. I'm not sure. Maybe that's just to be president.
All right, Funda, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. And
yeah,
thank you guys for watching. Thanks guys for watching and listening again in the Black and White podcast. We'll see you next time.